Hello, I'm Charles Kovess. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show. In this week's episode, on Father's Day, I predict some startling things that are going to happen. I predict things just like I had to do when I first became a father of 5 children. One at a time, of course, except when I had twins. There are consequences for decisions that we make as fathers, as parents, and there are consequences for decisions being made by governments, by large corporations, by technocrats, by bureaucrats. I predict some of those consequences. These predictions, hopefully, will make you think about the consequences of what might happen in the future and therefore increase your ability to cope, indeed thrive, in the future to come. Stick around. I hope you will be provoked. This weekly show is founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Self-awareness plus passion equals success, your success. That's why I do this show, to help you become more successful in the way that you want to become successful. Since 1993, when I left my successful legal career that I had practiced for 20 years, that was my passion while I was a young child, to become a lawyer. I have inspired, provoked, educated people on the power of their passion, to inspire them to discover their passion, to live life with passion. I've been a professional speaker. I am a professional speaker. I run coaching programs for teams, for individuals, and I've written 2 key books: Passionate People Produce, Passionate Performance. The feedback that I've received over the last 28 years, since 1993, has enabled me to continue this journey of provocation, because I know it makes a difference. Thank you for joining us on this show, whether it be by podcast or watching on YouTube. My commitment to you is to make this of enormous value to you for the half hour that you spend watching or listening. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle: the unexamined life is not worth living. So I hope that I provoke you to examine your thinking, your behavior, your spiritual life, to help you be the success that you want to be and to inspire those around you. You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. Red, the color of passion. This is my brand, red. And I do it because I want you, when you see red, to be reminded of the value and the power of discovering and pursuing your passion. Each week I explore one big idea. One big idea, because too many ideas confuse us. Although today I'll be exploring some predictions. That's more than one idea, but the principle that I'm exploring today is the value of making predictions about the future. And whilst I focus on one big idea, I share with you 6 resources to help you implement that idea: a quote, a book, a spiritual tip, a health tip, some humor, and a song that, when you listen to that song, gives you new insights into the idea that I've been exploring with you. This show is not meant to be politically correct. I hope I never act like I am being politically correct. We support wonderful addictions that are good for you. And regular viewers and listeners will know that my wonderful addiction is caffeine. Yum. And alcohol, of course. Am I addicted to alcohol? That's a good question. Anyway, I certainly love having a Hungarian palinka and a scotch, a neat scotch, and a beer. So they're my 3 favorite drinks. My 4 favorite drinks would be scotch, palinka, beer, and high quality champagne. However, if you force me to have some other alcohol, trust me, I will be willing to drink it. So, what's happened since last week? from episode 74 to today's episode 75. Can you believe that? If you go back to YouTube and the podcast, you'll see those 74 preceding episodes. Amazing how time goes on. You might not be surprised to know that I haven't run out of things to share with you, although it does take a fair bit of time to come up with what to share with you that will be of value in whatever circumstances we're going through today. However, there are ideas in previous episodes that are well worth revisiting. So check out the titles and get into the meat of the particular big idea if that resonates with you at the particular point in your life that you're at. So today in Australia is Father's Day, and I am a father of 5 children aged from 40 down to 10. I'm delighted to inform you that my 5 children are in pretty good health, in fact excellent health. In our family we've had no great health dramas. My father, for whom I'm grateful, Zoltan, good Hungarian name, he died in 2007. So I thank him. I thank Julie's dad, Rob, for producing a wonderful, wonderful wife for me, my 3rd and final wife. And I honour all fathers for the effort that they made in raising you. So, before I get into this week's big idea, let me take a quick review of what's happened this week. Well, I'm sorry to report to you that Australia, a nation of 6 states and 2 territories, bound under a federation established in 1901 under a constitution similar to Canada and the United States, is fracturing into a series of states. It is horrific to see. Section 92 of the Constitution guarantees full and free border crossings between the states, and states have shut their borders. I think it's an outrage. I'm outraged that the federal government has not pushed back against states shutting their borders. There is no state of emergency in Australia, but the premiers of the states are loving the power that they illegally claim. And this fracturing is going to pay a big, big price in Australia's future, trust me. In Victoria, where I live, the Premier is behaving ridiculously. House lockdowns continue. I call them house arrests. And now they're predicting for another 2 months, when it's been shown globally to be a nonsensical strategy. Many people are suffering, but of course, it's not a majority. And that's why these premiers do what they're doing. But of course, the people that are left stuck at home in shocking environments, the mental health impact is huge. Front page news almost every day. Mandatory jabs are being promoted by CEOs of major companies. Full page ads are being put in the paper to encourage workers to get the jab so that things can get back to normal. Don't do that. And there are going to be consequences of that sort of mandatory behaviour. When our Prime Minister has says no jabs will be compulsory. Okay, no jabs are compulsory, but you can't work if you haven't had the jab. So tell me how that's not compulsory. Contrary to the whole international structure and the international treaty scheme into which Australia has entered. The work I've been doing, I've had meetings at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the mornings to coincide with London time. I'm making a contribution to a global council for health. There are over 50 organisations of doctors and experts who have vast experience in handling SARS-CoV-2 virus. They understand the impact of the jabs. They are opposed to the jabs. These are experts. So the ideas I'm sharing with you is a synthesis of over 50 organisations, and I'm on this council helping them. I'm also on a subcommittee of the council, the legal subcommittee, exploring and having meetings early in the morning each week about legal strategies that people can take to protect themselves from government overreach and corporate overreach. I've also established the Freedom Collaboration to get organisations in Australia particularly to fight for freedom. You be free to have the jab, I be free not to have the jab, because I assure you, dear listener, dear viewer, I will not be having the jab. Julie will not be having the jab. You take it at great risk. They are not safe. They are not effective. Do your research on this. Don't be swayed by your social group that is what you should be doing. Do your research, then make your decision. But relying on government views just to do what they say, in my view, is a flawed strategy. That's like one of the great lies. You've heard me say it before. I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. So, to today's big idea. As a father, I had to make decisions in raising children, sometimes, in conjunction with their mother. So there are two mothers, Jenny, mother of four, and Amy, the mother of one, in conjunction. But I still had to make decisions, because if I was opposed to something that Jenny or Amy wanted to do, then there would be consequences of that. But I had to make decisions based on what I predicted the consequences would be. So today I'm going to share some predictions with you. These 6 predictions might help you make decisions about what you predict, because your thinking about what might happen in the future will help you make decisions today. To give you an idea of these decisions I had to make, I had to decide what house we were going to live in, where, in which suburb. I had to decide what food my children would eat. And that was then based on, well, what's the impact of the food that they will eat? I had to decide what school they would go to, if they would go to school, or whether it would be homeschooling. I had to decide what disciplines to impose on my children, which disciplines were relevant. When would it be sensible to impose a discipline and when not? What systems we would use in the house that would enable the house to run well and functionally, as distinct from dysfunctional and crazy. I mean, why bother? Because I predicted there would be consequences for not having a well-run house. What values I would teach my children, what values would I demonstrate in living and then show to them the way that I lived. And Ralph Waldo Emerson has a beautiful quote. He said, and I use this in workshops, he said, "Who you are speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say." So as a parent, don't preach to your children if you're not behaving. Your children observe your behavior. So these were decisions that I had to make, and I had to predict consequences. So I'm making some predictions now, because we're going through some pretty amazing, dramatic times. I really do equate this to what went on before World War II, through Nazi Germany, the development of the pressure. I've read a lot about history of the 20th century, and I think we're in some pretty staggering times that are going to have some pretty big consequences. So let me predict the 6 things that I do. Number 1, there will be massive health problems from the coronavirus stabs or injections. Massive health problems. Significant numbers of deaths. In Australia, the TGA's own website reports over the last 8 months, while there have been 89 deaths from coronavirus reported, there have been 459 deaths reported from the stabs, from the injections. But there have been thousands, over 12,000 adverse events reported, and the evidence is clear that nowhere near all adverse events or deaths get reported. So I predict massive health problems, and that will have massive health consequences on the hospital system. So in one of our states in Australia, Western Australia, It is reported on the front page of the Australian newspaper, one of the mainstream newspapers in this country, that the WA health system cannot cope at the moment, right now, and it has 0 COVID cases. Massive health problems to come. Second prediction, there will be apartheid based on those who have taken the stabs and those who have not. This is a shocking thing. There will be people who are treated differently depending on that. And just like in South Africa with apartheid, there will be jabbed or no jabbed apartheid. My third prediction, many politicians in years to come will be shown to have been corrupt in the decisions that they have taken today in relation to COVID-19. The corruption will come out, just as it has about politicians in the past that you read about today from 10, 20, 30 years ago, from biographies of politicians. There are decisions being made that can only be justified, in my view, on the basis of corruption. That's why I predict it'll come out. That also is why the federal government in Australia is resisting the establishment of a federal commission against corruption, because they're well aware of how much corruption is going on federally. There are state-based limited corruption commissions that also behave badly in some cases, I do concede, but nevertheless, it's remarkable that in Australia there isn't a federal commission against corruption. My fourth prediction, there will be massive worker shortages. Massive. Because workers will not take the stab or the injections, and businesses that require people to be jabbed won't be able to find workers. Those businesses will suffer. The suffering of those businesses, and they deserve to suffer, by the way, to not employ people because they haven't had a jab, is apartheid that I absolutely reject. But that's what will happen. There will be massive shortages. That also ties into the money that's being given out by government left, right and centre in these lockdown times, that this impact on the economy means that there are people who sit at home and do nothing because they're getting government support. It's a precursor to the UBI, the Universal Basic Income. I reject that nonsensical idea. I'm all in favour of supporting people who need support. I'm not in favour of government supporting people who don't need support. My fifth prediction, as a consequence of all this disruption and apartheid, there will be local communities who create their own local economies that will use distinct currency, that will be in a whole new way of interacting with each other. They will essentially be living off-grid because they refuse to participate in the over-medicalised, corrupt system. So local communities will create local economies that will help the members of those local communities to thrive. And when I say local communities, it's not necessarily village-based, town-based, but philosophy-based. Our leaders, our governments are creating this need for people to disengage from corrupted and unscientific behaviours. My sixth prediction is that business leaders and CEOs will personally be held liable for damage caused as a consequence of requiring workers to be stabbed. And many workers will take the stab or the injection because that's the only way they can keep their jobs. If you don't want the jab and you take it because you're forced to, then I urge you to serve a notice of liability on your company, on your CEO, and never resign. Do not resign if you're forced to take it. Do it under protest. Serve the notice of liability. And if you stick to your principles and and this is what I urge, do not take the jab. Don't resign. Wait till you are dismissed, because you will have a claim against your company for unfair dismissal. But CEOs, I hereby put you on notice that you are taking massive risks. And the fact that the Australian government has come out and said, we will indemnify companies that require injections to be put into workers, that will prove to be illusory. Why do I say that's illusory? Because the next parliament that comes in will see the madness of this, that it's the injured workers from their own taxes that will be paying out money in compensation for damage caused to their health by these jabs. I have many more predictions about what I think is going to happen, but I hope that these 6 predictions help you in your thinking about what you do now. And I'm now going to share with you some resources about this big idea that will help you in your predictions, your own predictions for your life, so that you can start to take action to prepare just in case these predictions come to fruition. So, my song of the week. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. And particularly relevant on Father's Day, isn't it? You know, when I was just a little boy, I asked my father, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? Here's what he said to me. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. That's true, but you can make an impact on your future. So think about it, but don't stress about what will be, because living life with fear is a shitty way to live. And I deliberately say shitty. So my quote is from Marianne Williamson, who put together a wonderful book called A Return to Love. And I love this quote. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. As you are liberated from your fear, the environments in which you move, you liberate others from their fears. Don't be driven by fear. Be driven by love, because love is the opposite of fear. You've heard on previous episodes, I've discussed the fear versus love dichotomy and the continuum. When I say to people, what's the opposite of love? They say hate, but hate is driven by fear. And fear comes from your mind. Love comes from your soul, your spirit, your heart. Don't let fear dominate your behavior. My spiritual tip is to pray. If you believe in prayer, then pray for a future that you would love to see, rather than the dystopian future that I have painted here. And what do I mean by a dystopian future? A dystopian future is the opposite of a utopian future. So what is the future that you want to create on our planet? And to help you understand the impact of this, on the book this week is George Orwell's 1984. Reread that. I'm sure many of you have read it, but reread it to look at what happens if we don't work to predict and create our future. If we leave it to corrupt politicians, if we leave it to corrupted thinkers who are driven by fear and not by love, not by caring, and in an untrustworthy environment, what George Orwell predicted is what can happen, is happening, and I urge us to stop it happening. My health tip is for you to understand that the healthier you are, the greater is your coping ability with whatever happens. If you are unhealthy, then your ability to cope with difficult challenges reduces. So recommit to being as healthy as you possibly can be. And talking about health and talking about all these challenges, my humor this week is to is to share with you actual entries in hospital charts of various patients. This is what was actually written on hospital charts. Number one, the patient refused autopsy. Pretty difficult to do when you're dead. Number two, the patient's medical history has been remarkably insignificant with only a 40-pound weight gain in the past 3 days. Number three, she has no rigors or shaking chills, but her husband states she was very hot in bed last night. Number four, the patient has chest pain if she lies on her left side for over a year. Number five, on the second day, the knee was better, and on the third day, it disappeared. Number six, the patient is tearful and crying constantly. She also appears to be depressed. And number seven, the patient has been depressed since she began seeing me in 1993. Ah, dear, oh dear. And you want to take the risk of going to hospital? I don't think so. And as I've said before in health terms, I have not been to hospital for being unwell ever in my life. And as you know, my children are aged from 40 down to 10. And I'm also delighted to say that my children have not been to hospital. So we have this, because of my father and my mother, we have a long history of commitment to health since my dad first went to a naturopath in 1963. It has a big impact on your life. So that's it for this week's show. I invite you to visit our websites, covest.com for corporate programs, for public programs, charlescovest.com for the self-awareness and passion quest. You can subscribe to Passion Points to Ponder. You can get the Self-Awareness and Passion Quest Manifesto. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoy this YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Please share this with your family, with your friends, with your work colleagues, if you think it's of value. I hope today has provoked you to have some predictions for the future. I hope this program helps you to make decisions that are of value to you, to your family, to your friends. The future of the country in which you live is up to you, is up to me. I am responsible for Australia's future, and I'm responsible for the planet's future. That's how I think. That's how Julie thinks. That's why we do the work that we do, because we care about our clients, we care about the planet, we care about the country in which we live. I care about you. That's why I do this program. I hope you find it of value. I hope you live this week with passion. Embrace the challenges because there are many of them. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I look forward to being with you next week. Bye.